Hello dear learners, welcome to the next episode on learning theories. In my last module we had discussed on a theory called as behaviorism. Today I'll take you to another learning theory which is Constructivism. Constructivism, although it is regarded as to be a very new learning theory, it is not. It is reaching India in 1950s. But it had its own merits, it has its own merits, and today in this module we will be discussing the merits of constructivist learning theory. So basically, what is constructivism? It is a theory that equates learning with creating meaning from experience. So when you talk about creating meaning from experience, so whose experience can you think of or recount of? It is creating meaning from the experience of oneself and also with interaction with others. So constructivism in its core value places a lot of importance to social interaction. If you look at the propounders of constructivist theory, it is Vygotsky, Brunner, Piaget, these are the propounders of constructivist theory. So a lot of emphasis has been given to meaningful learning which is an experience derived from oneself and also with a validated social interaction with others. So as opposed to the idea, that humans acquire meaning, it is humans create meaning. Because my understanding of a concept may be entirely different from that of yours. It is very, very contextual in nature. For example, if I take an example of a bridge. So an understanding of a bridge by a rural student is entirely different from that of an understanding of a bridge of an urban student. So it is very, very contextual. So as opposed to acquiring it, humans create meaning. So what happens in the process is the focus of instruction shifts from teaching to learning, which is very, very important. Now this actually helps the viewers understand the dictum of constructivism. When the focus shifts from teaching to learning, what all can change in the scenario? So the teacher in this case is no more a sage on stage, but rather a guide on site. Meaning to say that the teacher is no more in a position of an instructor, but rather a facilitator. So it is very, very important to understand what the minds of the students understand, how children learn. If teachers teach them with that understanding how children learn, they become a co-learner and the whole perspective changes and the focus of attention, the focus changes from teaching to learning. So meaning is created by the learner. And here I'll also tell you about that learning objectives are not pre-specified. That means it gives a lot of room for flexibility. It is not very, very specific and bounded. Of course, you're bound under a major dictum that this has to be taught, but how it has to be taught, when it has to be taught, that liberty entirely lies with the facilitator. Based on the mood, based on the context, and based on how it can be taken up, based on children's understanding, whether they are acquiring it fast or slow, the teacher can take a call of how to take it forward. I hope in this slide we have understood the basic meaning of constructivist learning theory, and it means that humans create meaning. And it is a very meaningful learning process. So taking you from the understanding of constructivism to the process itself, the process means, even though the emphasis is on the learner's construction, the facilitator's role is very significant and crucial. It's not that you let the children do what they want, make an understanding of themselves. So facilitator's role here doubles up, because they have to plan the lesson how they will execute it in class. They'll have to decide on the context, how they will play it out. For example, if I give you an example from mathematics like fraction, how do you take up? So it is just not, defining fractions. Part of a whole is called as fraction. This could mean, they can take it up in a very, very playful manner, divide the students among themselves in a group, put them into a circle, ask them, you can do a game called as, which is very, very popular, called as the bombing the city, and figure out in this playful manner how many students are there on a particular station and what fraction of students, and then help the students come to the concept of fraction. Okay, how many students are in one particular station out of the 4 stations, and let the students derive meaning for themselves, and they themselves will give you an example or a lead on, this is just a part, half of them, or probably this is 1/3 of them. So what is 1/3? Then when you teach like that, that is called as a constructivist approach of teaching and learning, where the children will derive meaning for themselves. Okay. Then constructivism emphasizes the interaction between environment and experiences. So, it is an interaction between environment and experiences, meaning to say that if a child who has not seen a flyover, he will not be able to conceive a flyover in his mind. If a child who has not travelled international will not be able to conceive and envisage when you talk about international policies and international programs and countries abroad. Of course, with the digital world, in the YouTube world, it all becomes easy, but still, when you have to talk about experiences, the experiences have to be very, very contextual, and that the teachers can share based on the local examples, so that the children can relate and will be able to make their own meaning. Here again and again I am emphasizing on the word meaning, because every child's understanding is different and is very, very individual. Constructivism lays a lot of emphasis on content and the context. So what you are teaching, how you are teaching, and the context, basically the environment. So it is, you have to take them gradually in a playful manner, establish the concept. It may not work so well with conventions, but it works very well with concept establishing concepts. So it is very, very important for us to understand the context. When I say us, it stands for facilitators, to understand the context and then help the children build a meaning for themselves. Give them a lot of room to establish the social interactions, to talk with the students, and then help them validate their own thought process. You get involved in the process, you become a co-learner, and that is how it would be a total experiential, fruitful, meaningful learning. So in the process, what happens is learners do not transfer knowledge from the external world into their memories. Unlike the previous theory we learned, behaviorism gives a lot of emphasis on how you can reproduce stimulus and response based on memory. This theory doesn't emphasize so much on the transfer from memory. Rather, they build their personal interactions of the world based on individual experiences and interactions. So this might get you to thinking, okay, so what are the factors which influence learning? So of course, learning is influenced by the learner himself, because he is the person who is going to make meaning of a concept. The environmental factors. So like I said, is the child in the rural setup or in urban setup? The environmental factors has what kind of previous knowledge and experience the child is having, how much of help he is having, is the child able to understand, draw meaning of the project assignments the teachers are giving. So based on all those support systems also help in the child to make meaning of a particular concept. And of course, the interaction between the learner and the environmental factors. So these are the key influencers in the process of constructivist approach of learning. So all this gets us to thinking, how is actually a constructivist lesson structured? The constructivist specifies instructional methods and strategies that will assist learners in exploring concepts. So here the keyword is assist, which stands for facilitating. So the constructivist teachers will facilitate the learning process in exploring the concepts. Okay. For example, even the vocabulary. So the child builds on to their vocabulary during the course of time. Again, an environmental influence and based on the social interactions the child is making, also based on the personal, liking and interest of the learner. So, why all this? Because knowledge is not abstract but is linked to the context under study. Learners are encouraged to construct their own understanding and then validate it through social negotiation. So, the key emphasis being on social interaction, because you learn a lot from the environment, the culture, the language. All these are influencers in the learning and meaning making exercise. And that is how we define constructivism. It is making meaning of the concept by oneself and with interaction with others. So, we'll take you forward. I hope I have facilitated this lesson of constructivism, which will help you reflect more examples from your context and from your environment on the concept of constructivism. Do help us get back with your feedback in the link provided. Thank you so much for tuning in.